Okay, so what I wanted to see today is there's the whole story of the death of Sarah is quite a difficult one just to understand why she passed away and what have you. Just if I can, it was my sister's yahrzeit yesterday. She actually passed away on Sunday of Parshat Chayei Sarah. So it was, I don't know, I think it's 19 years, whatever it is, since the time is always on the same day. So if we can just learn for the week in the course of Chayei Shalom Sarah Meirat Bas Chaim, it's my sister, and please God her neshama should have an aliyah. Okay,
Amen.
Thank you. So if we look at the psukim, so the psukim describe, and not in a very clear way, what happened. It just says that so she lived for this 127 years, and then it says Sarah, and Sarah passed away. Kiryat Arba, she passes away in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, Eretz Canaan, in Eretz Canaan. And Avram comes along, lispod l'Sarah, and he gives her a hesped v'livkota, and to cry over her. And the difficulty in that is there are a few difficulties. The first thing is, and this is asked by a few of the more of the Achronim, asked, what is she doing in Kiryat Arba? Why is that so important? Because if you remember the end of last week's parsha, where it speaks about after the Akedah, that Avram went back to Be'er Sheva, which is where they lived. So the question is, what is Sarah doing in Kiryat Arba? Because she should be in Be'er Sheva, because that's where they were living, that's where they had established their home. Why did she pass away at this point in time? So Rashi tells us that the reason she passed away is because while the whole Akedah was happening, the way the Rashi describes it is that the Satan showed her a picture of Avraham Avinu shechting, about to shecht. Yitzchak didn't complete the picture. She got such a fright, or whatever the case is, and it was had such an impact on her, and so therefore she passed away. As the way Rashi describes it, Parcha nishmata mimena umeita. Her neshama left her. Her neshama just left her, and she passed away. And so that's how Sarah passed away. Why is it in Kiryat Arba? And Kiryat Arba, we know, is a place where lots happens. But comes along the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, and he says the following. And it's an amazing Orach Chaim, because it gives us so much understanding of what a tzaddik is really about. Remez Akasu ba'omrik b'Kiryat Arba. Why does it tell us Kiryat Arba? Lomar ki chas v'chalila lo yityachem hamitza letzadikim ela shekiryat Arba pirish ir she'ata benuya midalet yisodot. Why is it called Kiryat Arba? It's called Kiryat Arba because it is built on the 4 yesodot. So we know that there's I think it's earth, wind, fire, and water. I think these are the 4 yesodot that the world is built on, and that there's a certain tradition around that, and explains the Orach Chaim that if the world, this city specifically, Kiryat Arba, is built on that. In other words, what it really is that the city of Kiryat Arba is a fundamental space in the creation of the world. But what happens here? It says, "V'shvatamat Sarah b'Kiryat Arba, he Chevron." What does it mean? He Chevron. Shagam shemeita he mishpat bahem b'chinat hachibur. When she passes away, says the Orach Chaim, when she passes away, what she did is she took all these 4 forces, these 4 yesodot, and he Chevron. She brought them all together. Why? Because ki hatzadikim hagam sheyamutu aguf eino mushlal me'achayim. Says that even though with tzadikim, even though the body, the physicality dies, they don't leave the world. Ki tzadikim b'mitatim kurim chayim. Because when tzadikim pass away, even in their death, they're considered to be alive because the impact that they have in this world is so powerful. And that's why it says, what does a tzaddik do? And the truth is, we all do this in our small way when we do what we do, is that we take the physical yesodis, the physical foundations of the world, and through the Maasim Tovim and the Torah that we learn and the things that we do for one another, what we do is we change the nature of that physical thing, says the Orach Chaim, into something spiritual. And he says, and that's really why it says that Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, Hebron. It's not that she died in Kiryat Arba necessarily on a physical level, but she died. She was in this place where she was able to take all the Arba Yesodot, the different foundations of the world. Hebron, she brought them together, as he says. It says because that because through the process where a person is so connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that all the yesodot, they all change and they become into the yesod ha'esh, into one fundamental, the fundamental yesod of fire, the yesod ha'esh, the yesod ha'esh neshama. And the Yesod Ha'esh is really the Yesod of the Neshama. And we have to understand that that's really what we are trying to do in our lives, is to bring everything together into this thing which connects deeply into our Neshamas. And therefore, according to the Orach Chaim, that's why she dies in Kiryat Arba. The Netziv says a little bit different. He says that he asked that question, what was she doing there? He says that he says once, why she dies, for whatever reason it is that she's in Hebron. It could be just for every reason, just coming to a more she might be looking for Avraham Avinu. Maybe it says that maybe she went to look for Avraham Avinu, says the Netziv, that she had no idea where he was. But the closest place from Beersheba to where she was in the way to is Hebron, and that's where we know that's in the area. Hebron is just outside Yerushalayim. It's not just outside. It's to the south of Yerushalayim, and she was on the path towards that. We know that if you stand at a certain place in Yerushalayim, you can actually see the path that Avraham traveled. The way they describe it, that Avraham traveled from where he was all the way up through Hebron up to the Har Moriah. And she came there and she passes away, and that's why she's in Hebron. But what does it mean? The next part of the pasuk, Vayavo Avraham lispod lesara velivkota. Avraham, it says he came lispod lesara velivkota. He came to eulogize her and to cry over her. So surely the crying would come before the eulogy. So the Netziv once again points out and he says the following: Derech ha'olam tchila livkot beino leben atzmo ve'achar kach lahaspid barabim. Says the way a person works is that he cries within himself on loss, and then after that he's maspid barabim. Then he brings a eulogy in for the public, and that's generally. What we say is lebechi ulamispa. First comes the crying, and then comes the hesped. But Avraham Avinu was originally, if you remember, he returned to Beersheba. So he went to Beersheba. She wasn't there. So what does he do now? He has that she's passed away. Now he moves from Beersheba, and now he comes to Hebron. That whilst all of this was happening, there were so many people around the house. To be part and to comfort, to be part of that, mishum hachi needs darej laspida techila barabim. So therefore, before Avram even has the opportunity, says the Netziv, to cry over Sarah, what he wants to do is there's all these people there. He wants to be maspid her barabim. He wants to show and recognize who she was amongst all those people who've come to pay their respects. And then he says an amazing thing. There's also, when it comes to death, and I'm sorry to be a bit, in the death part, but it's important. He says, when it comes to death, there are different types of people who pass away, and there are different types of mourners. And he says the following: if the person who passes away causes through their passing that the life of that the total way in which that person lived their life is completely changed. The tsaro meruba yoser, then and the tsar and the pain is so much. Meshabeach hamet atzmo azaya bechi koidim v'ikar laspid. That if it's so much pain, then the person who is the person who passed away gets the crying, and then koidim the ikar laspida. The ikar of the whole experience of mourning is in the crying because of the loss. Mashe ein kain im lahefech shema meiskore marisa balichas ha'olam shalav elav v'shabchoihu meruba. Says, however, if the person who passes away doesn't really change the way of life of the mourner, so then what comes the ikar is the hesped, because then it's kind of a celebration of that person's life. So what we have here is death is sometimes, the way the Netziv wants to say, there are two aspects of death. The one is where it has such a deep impact, it's tragic, and therefore the person who it impacts on, their whole life is going to change. Therefore, there comes the tears first. But if if it's not so tragic, and death is sad, it's not always tragic. If a person passes away in the last few weeks, we've had people passing away of 92, 96, 99, that's not tragic, that's sad. So then one has to celebrate their life, and one has to acknowledge who they were. And in that case, now we see, Mitat Sarah, says the Netziv, Lo garam la'Avram shinu b'alichas olamah. The death of Sarah is not going to change Avram's life that much. Already Yitzchak is older, and at the end of the day, he says, Shu tachlis, he's the tachlis of everything, Yitzchak. The Hespira Rabbah al pi chashivuta, and therefore Avram Avinu, he's sad, but he wants to celebrate the life of Sarah and explain to the world who she was. Therefore, the hesped comes before the tears, and perhaps that's such an important lesson for us to learn, that we have to recognize different tragedies in different ways, or different passings in different ways. Sometimes it's a time to celebrate, and sometimes to celebrate the life of that person, and sometimes it's a time to really to engage in that tragedy in a very powerful way. The Kli Yakar says something a little bit different. He says that he asks the same question also. Why? The Gemara tells him that you always have 3 days of crying and 7 days of hesped. So therefore, normally the hesped, there's more hesped than crying, but here you have hesped, and after the hesped, then you have the crying. So if that's the case, there must be something that's going on. So if he says, says the difference here is Sarah, is that because she was so great, and it's completely different from what the Netziv is saying, because she had so much impact on the life of Avram Avinu, and so much impact on the world around her, that her loss is so great that every single day you feel the lack of her Torah, of Maaseh HaTovim, and of her great deeds, and therefore the hesped comes first. But there's a long process of bechi. There's a long process of crying, and so we see that different of the Mefarshim want to try and understand things in different ways, because there is this strange way in which the Torah is written. But there's one more aspect of it that I wanted to point out, and that is that if you'll see in the word veliv kota, the chaf is written small. The chaf is written small. The chaf is it's strange. Why would you have a small letter? And therefore comes along the Kli Yakar, and he says the reason why the chaf is written, because when Sarah died, it was ki'ilu nichrav hamekdash. When Sarah died, it was so profound that it had such a deep impact, that it was so deep, and it was like he said, the one he wants to say, it was like 100 measures of sadness entered into the world, and the word and the chen remez hakaf ktana ki kaf olema, because the letter kaf, which is in itself 20, but if you spell it out, the chaf and the pay is 80 and the chaf part is 20. So that when you actually spell out the letter chaf, it actually amounts to 100. And therefore, what he wants to say was, if when Sarah died, it was 100 measures of sadness in the world that came out, and that remez is mentioned in the word. So we see that in the passing of Sarah, there is a change from the connection of all the different yesodot coming together. We see that there's deep pain, there's different types of pain, there's celebration of life, or there's engagement with tragedy. Different ones of the Mepharshim explain things different ways. And Bezrat Hashem will just help us to understand these psukim a little bit more. Have a beautiful day.